living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
More than 43 million people provide care for a family member or a loved one. And while caregiving can be fulfilling, it can also be difficult and taxing. How does a caregiver know when they need help, and where do they go to get that help? Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm Sarah Medley, your host. Today we'll talk about respite for caregiving. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Today I'm joined by Judy David, the owner of Visiting Angels Helena. Thank you so much, Judy, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Judy, let's talk about Visiting Angels, what it is, and the services you offer.
Sure, thank you. Visiting Angels provides in-home care to seniors, disabled, and veterans. We like to say that we have a team approach to care, and we're relationship-based, so we're not transactional. We really do work to build trust with our clients and to be there for them and to support the family as a whole.
So the services that you're providing are so important for those that need the care. How do you also impact with family members and loved ones?
Well, we like to say that we help the family just as much as we help the client. Sometimes you have the weight of the world on your shoulders when a loved one needs care, if you're worried about them being alone, or if there's a recent diagnosis. So the care that we provide, as someone personally who's cared for loved ones in my own home prior to Visiting Angels, I know that it's nice to have an advocate. It's nice to have a sounding board, someone to talk to. So we really do help to empower our clients and their families, and to, because we don't know what we don't know when all of a sudden a loved one is diagnosed with something, or suddenly they're experiencing something that we haven't realized before. So we're there to support them, to give them peace of mind, to communicate on behalf of the loved one sometimes, and just to make sure that the loved one has a good quality of life.
For those who may have heard the term but are not really familiar with it, what is respite care?
So ideally, respite implies a break, a breather, time away. And there's a saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. So everybody needs a little breather, whether it's a walk around the block or the time that you can go have coffee. It's something that it's time away so that you can recharge yourself.
You know, the term caregiver burnout is becoming more commonplace. What really is that?
Well, let me just start by saying it's a real thing. Caregiver burnout is when you're just completely overwhelmed. And what happens with most caregivers, especially family caregivers, is that they're so focused on providing care, the quality of life of their loved one, that they neglect themselves. They'll put off their own doctor's appointments, their own well-being, because they don't want to sacrifice the care for their loved one. So it is important to take that respite time and to care for yourself. I might have said this before, but when you're on an airplane, they say to put your oxygen mask on first, and then your child or your partner. And it's really true.
When do older adults or even older children know that it's time to get some professional help?
Well, it's really personal. It's really tough to pinpoint. But I would say when, as an adult child providing care and interacting with parents, if the care or the conversation is causing stress on your relationship, because at some point the adult child may take the lead and become the parent. There's a transition there. But what we want is for the dignity to remain, and the parents to always remain the parents. So when that natural relationship becomes stressed or burdened, that's when it's time to bring in a professional.
Judy, if a family member is looking to hire or engage a caregiver, what kind of questions should they ask?
Well, definitely check for references. And there's so many different opportunities for care, whether it's a family member, a neighbor, sometimes it's a college student, or somebody that you may know from church, or sometimes it's an agency like Visiting Angels. But people are in your home, it's a very intimate setting, so we want to have trust. And in order to vet trust with somebody that you don't know necessarily, you're going to want to check references. If it's an agency, you're going to want to know what type of background checks do they run? Do they do a drug test? What type of insurance? Because if you don't know the person, if you're just calling somebody from the classifieds or care.com, it puts the homeowner, the client, it really opens them up to a lot of risk. So we want to make sure that the client is protected.
You mentioned insurance. Does a person's health insurance cover services like yours?
I get this question all the time, and I wish it did. Some states are starting to adopt Medicare Advantage, which does, based upon the state, it does allow for our care to be covered. Right now, the only insurance that covers that we're aware of here in Montana is veterans. So we serve a lot of veterans who served our country, and now we get to serve them through their VA benefits. And then we have other clients that are private pay, or they have long-term insurance. So we work with clients on their long-term insurance as well.
What kind of training is available to a caregiver?
For a family member that's providing care, depending on where they're at, and keep in mind, long-term, this type of care is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So the type of resources that you may be reaching out for could evolve over time as your loved one's condition or diagnosis progresses. For me personally, when I was caring for my mother-in-law in my home, she had a form of Parkinson's. The Parkinson's Association, so community groups, any kind of outreach locally, that's where you're going to learn the most. Nurses, providers, they're there to support you.
Judy, that is fantastic information. Thank you so much for joining us. So we need to pause and take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about caregivers and the fact that they need to make sure they watch out for themselves, and what can we do to help them even more. So please stay tuned. Welcome back. We've been talking about caregiver respite, and now we're going to talk about additional information about what we might need to know about respite for caregivers and how to stay well. So joining me now is Cindy Stevick. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So talk to us about your background in this industry.
Well, in the mid-'80s, my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and I jumped in with both feet because we didn't know anything about it. I joined a support group. Soon I was facilitator of the support group, and next thing I knew, I was the founding president of the Alzheimer's Association in Eastern Montana. At that time, we had very little understanding of what was going on. We didn't have adult daycare. We didn't have a lot of respite, didn't even know what that was. My mother was working really, really hard to keep my father out of the nursing home. In fact, she gave up her life to do that. She died 6 months before my father. So I'm really passionate about this. I really want to make sure that I can help caregivers survive.
Oh, goodness, what a story. So according to AARP, only about 14% of caregivers actually seek some sort of respite for themselves. Talk to us about that, and then why self-care is so important, clearly.
Clearly, it's very important. Usually the caregivers and the family members concentrate on helping the person that's ill, the person that we're caring for. Statistics in Alzheimer's show that a large percentage of the Alzheimer caregivers actually die first. So the stress can cause loss of sleep, constant worry, a lot of struggles. And the caregivers often really relinquish their right to good health because they're focusing on the person that they're caring for. If they're not paying attention to their health, then their health declines, and it can go unnoticed for far too long. Really, families are the ones that need to be paying attention to what's happening with the caregiver.
Judy, why do you think it's so common for caregivers to find difficulty in accepting respite care?
Especially in a spousal situation, the caregiver knows their spouse. They know what their habits are. They know what their likes and dislikes are. They don't really want to relinquish the right to care to anybody else. So they also don't know what to expect. As Judy said, we want to make sure that we've got a trained caregiver that's been background checked. Families and a caregiver in a spousal situation doesn't know if their loved one is going to accept a stranger in their home. And it's just a feeling of, I can do it better myself. I'm just fine. I don't need help. But in time, those needs become very serious. And it seems to be a common thread among spousal caregivers that, hey, I know my person. I can do it myself. I'm sure Judy will agree to that.
Cindy, what signs should a caregiver be aware of that really tells them, I need help?
There's several signs. It has a lot to do with health, but the caregiver is usually the last one to notice. So be aware that family members are usually the first ones to say, hey, there's something going on. Or if they're a member of a support group members notice. Family and friends can notice a change in mood, decreased interest in the things that they used to love to do. Depression is also a major sign, loss of appetite, weight loss. My mother said that she always slept with her eyes wide open, or one eye wide open. So that meant she didn't really sleep. It's really important for us to know that we need help. It's really hard to convince the caregiver though, because they think they can do it.
If a caregiver is showing those signs of stress and strain, what are the first next steps they should take to manage that stress?
Well, they should go see their physician, number one, and check out and see if there's anything serious going on. But there's also a little exercise that I do with my support group, and that is to determine, where do we feel stress in our body? Is it between our shoulder blades? Is it a headache? Do we have increased heart rate? What's going on? And once we notice what our body is doing and telling us, then we need to take the very next step to revitalize our spirit. That's my term.
Well, that's a good segue into telling all of us how we can revitalize our spirit.
It's different for everybody. But for some, it's going for a walk in the woods. For some, it's sitting by a mountain stream, going to lunch with a friend. For me, it's playing my piano. We had one member of our support group say, I used to paint. I did watercolors. I haven't done that in years. So finding out what really refreshes you, what revitalizes your spirit and allows you to become patient and kind again. And it's something that we don't do very often. We need to realize it needs to be done maybe at least once or twice a week for us to really refresh our spirit.
So clearly it's important to do these things. Are there other tips you could give to prevent caregiver burnout? Yes, there are. We need to just realize that we have to pay attention to that caregiver. They don't know what's happening to them very often, as in my mother. My mother was a lovely person. She loved my father and didn't want to give up the care. So especially now that we have services, we've got respite care, we've got adult daycare, become aware of these things. Schedule time that friends and family can help, and also become familiar with what's in your community for respite care so that when you need it, you know who to call. Oh, Cindy, thank you so much for sharing your great information. We need to pause and take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about resources and funding that are available for caregiving. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. Joining me now is Vicki Clear. Vicki is the Lifespan Respite Director at DEEP, which is the Developmental Educational Assistance Program, which is a nonprofit organization here in Montana. Welcome to visiting with us, Vicki.
I'm really excited to be here.
So the topic of caregiver respite is a very broad one. Can you talk to us about the resources your program provides?
Well, we have a lifespan respite program and a Montana Lifespan Respite Coalition that kind of helps us decide what to do. And we have a website, and on our website there are some caregiver tips, information, links to training, different places you can send requests. But the biggest program, of course, that we are doing right now is the Lifespan Respite Voucher Program. Do you want me to I'll explain what that is.
I would love to know about that voucher program.
Oh, it is the best program. What it does is help provide funding for people to pay for respite. Caregivers that have limited means and don't get respite anywhere else, especially, they can apply for a respite voucher. And with that voucher, then they can hire anyone they want that's over 18 and does not live with them to provide respite, or they may use an agency, which several do, or they can even use a facility for some respite too. And then it's a reimbursement program, and they can actually pay their respite provider after they get the reimbursement if they wish. And we do have a little bit of a copay if their income is, it has to be fairly large. It's pretty flexible, but we take their net income minus all their medical expenses and come up with the amount. And some people might pay a 10%, 20%, but they don't seem to mind because they're so grateful for the help.
It's common for caregivers to be unpaid family members. So are there resources then also for them to take a break and get some respite as part of this?
Well, that is what the voucher is for them to take a break. So they can go out, like Cindy said too, several caregivers pass away before their loved one that they're taking care of because they don't take the time to take care of themselves. And so they just can use this voucher however they want. They can have someone come into the house. They can have someone take their loved one out. Because of the COVID situation, we have suggested even if they can't get away because of that they could have people bring in their groceries or their, things that they need, and they can use it as transportation. We've really opened it up for them to use it as needed, and also have started providing other items to give them respite so they can stay in the home, like weighted blankets or robotic pets, ID bracelets, things like that.
Clearly, a lot of our viewers live in remote areas. So are there online resources for them or other resources for those that live more remotely away from urban areas?
It's really interesting. When we started this project, we thought that those that were living in those remote areas would have the hardest time finding respite providers, but they really don't. It seems like since the communities are so close together, they can usually find a friend or they have a family member that can provide the respite. And since that's allowed through our program, they actually have better luck finding a provider than those in the bigger cities. And they can also access the online. They can call me, and if I have information, I can share it with them, refer them to other programs, other agencies to help them find the resources they need.
It sounds like we've got so many services here. So are there similar services in other states?
There are 37 states that have a lifespan respite grant. Not all of them do the voucher program, and they don't all do it exactly like we do, but several of them do. Some of them provide different kinds of services, but it is a big group that was formed out of a legislation that I actually got to help write and years ago that provided the funding to help these caregivers get that support they need.
So in looking at one of the Montana Lifespan Respite Program taglines, I love this. It's okay to need it, it's okay to want it, and it's okay to get it. Can you speak to that message?
Well, and I think I've heard this already too in this program, is they don't want to accept the help a lot of times, and they feel guilty because they feel like they need a break. And I can relate to that because I took care of my child that has brittle bones. He's almost 30 now. So, and now I take care of my mom and brother. So you do kind of feel guilty if you feel like you have to ask for help, but you shouldn't, because it's really the best thing for both you and your loved one to take a break. And it's just okay to get it. And we just really want people to feel like it's okay. You deserve the break. It's better for your health, for your loved one's health. Just do it.
So does your program have training available to help caregivers really be set up for success?
We do have some links on it. It's a caregiver corner on the website that provides links to different kind of training that they can get. And we are looking forward to the future of providing some more online support, maybe a caregiver-led group that can kind of discuss and share ideas. And we do have a Facebook page that I'm working on putting the respite provider training that we're recruiting respite providers right now that can be listed on a database. And so we're going to have that training also on the website.
So in our remaining 30 seconds, what other advice might you give caregivers?
I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. Take the break. Everyone, after even an hour, says it's a life changer. Just do it.
Oh, thank you so much for being with us today, Vicki. And thanks again to Cindy and Judy for joining us. And thank you for watching us. And until next week, we want you to join us. We want you to stay fit, stay well, stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life. Take care, everyone.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health in partnership with AARP Montana. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org. or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the Healthy Living for Life logo. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.